Hi everyone, welcome back to JBC English Learning Academy. Make sure you hit the subscribe button because we share daily tips to improve your English. Today, we are going to focus on something very important for advanced learners, B2 LE English listening practice. If you have reached B2 level, congratulations, you are at the top of English learning. You probably already understand most grammar, vocabulary, and even tricky expressions, but don't think your work is done. Learning English never really stops. Even at this high level, there is always something new to learn. One of the most important skills you should keep improving is listening. Listening is not just hearing words, it's about understanding the meaning behind them. At B2, your goal is to understand English as native speakers do. This means you need to be able to follow conversations, TV shows, movies, podcasts, or even informal chats without stopping to think about translations in your head. Instead of translating, you think directly in English. This is what makes listening at this level both challenging and exciting. In this lesson, I want to teach you how to listen like a native speaker. Listening like a native is about more than just knowing words. It's about recognizing the rhythm, tone, and flow of English in real-life situations. When you practice this, you don't just memorize words, you start to understand English naturally. You can follow fast conversations, even if people speak quickly, use slang, or have different accents. At the B2 level, there are some important things you need to focus on. First, you should be able to understand advanced vocabulary. These are words that you might not hear every day. Second, you should handle complex sentence structures. This means long sentences with many clauses or ideas. Finally, you should notice the subtle meanings in speech. Sometimes people don't say exactly what they mean. You have to understand the message behind the words. A big difference between B1 and B2 listening is how natural the speech is. At B1, you can understand well-organized formal English, but at B2, you need to understand informal language too. This includes idioms, expressions, jokes, cultural references, and regional accents. For example, listening to a news report is one thing, but following a conversation between friends in a cafe is more challenging. Both are important, but the second one is closer to real-world English. Listening practice at this level also helps you speak naturally. When you hear how natives talk, you start using the same rhythm and style. Your sentences become smoother. You don't just speak correctly, you sound natural. Listening helps you feel how English works, not just in theory, but in everyday life. So, what should you expect from this lesson? We will practice understanding real English conversations. You will hear English spoken at normal speed with all its natural variations. This includes slang, casual expressions, and even different accents. By the end of this lesson, your goal is to think in English, understand faster, and enjoy listening without getting stuck translating every word. Remember, reaching B2 is impressive, but mastering listening is an ongoing journey. The more you practice, the closer you get to thinking and understanding like a native speaker. Listening is the key to fluency because it shapes how you speak, understand, and even think in English. So pay attention, listen carefully, and practice regularly. With consistent effort, you will notice a big improvement in both your listening and speaking skills. Keep practicing, stay patient, and enjoy the journey of mastering real-world English. When it comes to improving your listening skills at B2 level, the best way is to immerse yourself in real English. This means listening to things like podcasts, movies, TV shows, news broadcasts, or even casual conversations with native speakers. The goal is not just to hear the words, but to understand everything happening in the conversation, from the tone of voice to the emotions and hidden meanings behind what is being said. Listening regularly helps you improve your fluency. Fluency means being able to speak smoothly and naturally without pausing to think about every word. One of the secrets to improving fluency is listening to natural, unscripted English as much as possible. When you watch movies, listen to podcasts, or hear people talking in real life, your brain starts to recognize the rhythm and flow of the language. Over time, this makes it easier to process English quickly, understand it naturally, and respond without translating from your native language. Here's a key point. When you listen, don't focus only on the words. Pay attention to intonation, emotion, and pauses. Notice how speakers emphasize certain words, how their pitch rises or falls, and the speed at which they speak. All of these small details help you understand the subtle meanings in English. For example, the way someone says a sentence can completely change its meaning, even if the words are the same. These subtleties are what make your English sound natural instead of just correct. At B2 level, one of the biggest skills is thinking directly in English. By now, you shouldn't be translating from your native language anymore. Instead, your brain should process English automatically. The more you listen, the easier it becomes to understand new information immediately. Listening to native speakers regularly helps you absorb expressions, idioms, and common phrases naturally. This means that when you speak, your sentences will sound more like a native speaker, fluid, natural, and confident. A very useful technique is active listening. Active listening is more than just hearing words, it's fully focusing on the conversation. Try to understand the meaning behind every sentence. Notice the tone, pauses, and gestures. If it's face-to-face, you can even practice predicting what the speaker might say next. This trains your brain to notice patterns in English, which is exactly how native speakers think and speak. Another important part of listening at this level is real-world practice. This means listening to English the way people actually use it, not just textbook sentences. For example, follow a news report, but also watch a casual vlog or listen to a conversation in a cafe. Real-world English includes slang, informal expressions, jokes, and even regional accents. Remember, B2 listening is not about memorizing vocabulary or grammar rules. It's about understanding meaning, tone, and context. It's about noticing how English works in real life and letting that influence your own speaking. The more you listen carefully and actively, the more your mind will start to process English automatically. Over time, this helps you speak more fluently, respond faster, and understand even complex conversations with ease. In short, listening is the bridge between understanding and speaking naturally. By practicing regularly, focusing on real-world English, and thinking directly in English, you take your skills from advanced to truly native-like. The key is consistency, focus, and attention to detail. One of the most important things I want to emphasize is the value of listening to real-world conversations. Textbooks and formal lessons are useful, but they only take you so far. The real improvement comes when you listen to English as people actually speak it in daily life. This is where you pick up slang, informal expressions, and native-level idioms that textbooks often leave out. These are the words and phrases that make your English sound natural instead of overly formal or stiff. But learning from real conversations is not just about language, it's also about culture. Culture affects the way people speak, the expressions they use, and the meaning behind their words. When you understand cultural context, you can better interpret the intention behind a statement. And this is what makes communication in English smoother and more natural. Context is everything in language, because the same words can mean different things depending on how and where they are used. So, what can you do to practice? Start by finding real English conversations to listen to. This could be a movie, a podcast, a YouTube video, or even a news report. Focus carefully on how people speak. Notice how they phrase sentences, use expressions, and stress certain words. Pay attention to the tone of their voice, the pauses they make, and the emotions behind their words. All these small details help you start thinking like a native speaker. Your ear will gradually learn the natural flow and rhythm of English, and this will make understanding and speaking much easier. Remember, listening is not just about understanding words, it's about understanding meaning in context. Every conversation has a story behind it, and by focusing on the overall meaning, not just the individual words, you train your brain to process English in a more natural way. This is exactly what sets B2 level learners apart. They don't just know English, they understand English as it is actually used in real life. As we go further in this series, we will look at how to break down these conversations and improve your listening even more. You will learn to notice patterns, idioms, and subtle cues that give English its natural rhythm. But even before that, the first step is simple. Listen actively and attentively. Notice every detail in real-life conversations and try to absorb them as naturally as possible. Over time, you will find that your brain automatically starts recognizing expressions, predicting what might come next, and understanding the flow of dialogue without effort. It's also important to know the difference between formal English and real-life English. Formal English is what you hear in textbooks, academic videos, or news reports. It is structured, clear, and grammatically correct. But most real conversations are informal, relaxed, and full of expressions that might not make sense on paper. People often shorten words, combine phrases, or use slang to communicate quickly. By listening to these natural conversations, you start learning how English is really used every day, not just how it is written. To summarize, practicing listening at B2 level is about immersing yourself in real English, paying attention to tone, emotion, and context, and learning from natural conversations. This is the key to thinking in English, speaking naturally, and understanding native speakers effortlessly. The more you practice, the more these skills become automatic, and the closer you get to mastering real-world English. At the B2 level, one of the most important things to focus on is understanding how English is spoken naturally in everyday life. Unlike the formal English you might learn from textbooks, real conversations are often full of slang, idioms, and regional expressions. These are the words and phrases that make English sound natural and fluent. If you want to speak like a native, it's important to become familiar with them. Native speakers often use expressions and phrases that don't make sense if you translate them word for word into another language. These expressions are an essential part of real-world English. For example, the phrase "to break the ice" can be confusing if you translate it literally, but in English it means to start a conversation or make people feel comfortable in a new or awkward situation. Being able to recognize idioms like this when you hear them is a big part of becoming fluent in English. Understanding cultural context is just as important as learning the words themselves. Language and culture are closely connected. Many expressions only make sense if you know a little about the culture they come from. Take the phrase, "It's raining cats and dogs." If you are unfamiliar with English culture, you might imagine actual cats and dogs falling from the sky. In reality, it simply means it is raining very heavily. Cultural knowledge helps you understand the meaning behind words and phrases, which is key for listening, speaking, and reading comprehension. Different regions, social groups, and age groups often have their own ways of speaking. For example, British English has many expressions that are not common in American English. You might hear phrases like, "I'm knackered," which means tired, or "I'm feeling peckish," which means hungry. These are casual expressions that you probably wouldn't find in a formal textbook, but they are very common in everyday conversation. At the B2 level, you are expected to understand these variations and figure out the meaning based on context. Learning these expressions and cultural nuances also helps you sound more natural when speaking. When you hear how native speakers combine words, stress certain syllables, or pause in a sentence, you start to understand the rhythm and flow of English. This is important because English is not just about grammar and vocabulary, it's about how words are used naturally in conversation. One way to practice is by listening to real English conversations. Watch movies, TV shows, YouTube videos, or listen to podcasts.
Focus on how people use expressions, their tone of voice, and the way they phrase sentences. Pay attention to slang, idioms, and casual phrases. Try to notice patterns and repeated expressions. This helps you recognize idioms automatically and use them naturally in your own speaking. Another tip is to connect expressions to their cultural meaning. For example, in British English, saying, "I'm feeling peckish," is a friendly way of saying you are a little hungry. Saying, "I'm knackered," shows that you are very tired. Learning these phrases helps you understand conversations better and gives your own English a more authentic sound. At the highest level, understanding English is not just about words, it's about context, culture, and natural use. By listening carefully and paying attention to real-world conversations, you can think in English, understand idioms automatically, and respond naturally in everyday situations. This is what makes B2 level English truly advanced. At the B2 level, one of the most important skills is being able to understand and use slang and idioms naturally. These are an essential part of everyday English. By this stage, you should be able to recognize them quickly and even use them in your own speech without hesitation. Let's look at some examples. If a native English speaker says, "That movie was a real tearjerker," they don't mean it literally causes tears. They're saying the movie is emotionally moving or sad. Understanding these types of expressions is important because they appear everywhere in movies, conversations, books, and even on social media. Slang can be tricky because it changes over time. Words or phrases that were popular a few years ago may not be used today. This is why it's important to stay updated by listening to a variety of English sources. Podcasts, movies, TV shows, YouTube videos, and even stand-up comedy are excellent ways to hear modern, natural English. These sources show you how people actually speak, including casual phrases and informal expressions. To practice, try identifying slang in conversations. Imagine a short conversation where two friends are talking about their day. They might say things like chilling, going to, or it's a piece of cake. These are common informal expressions in everyday English. At B2 level, you should be able to understand these phrases immediately without stopping to think about them. Recognizing slang quickly is part of what makes your listening and speaking sound natural. Another important aspect of advanced listening is adapting to regional accents. English is spoken in many countries, and within each country there are different accents and ways of speaking. For example, London English and American English are both English, but people from the UK and the US often pronounce words differently, use different expressions, and even have unique slang. Understanding regional accents requires listening practice. The more you expose yourself to different accents, the easier it becomes to follow conversations in real life. For example, you might hear, "I'm knackered" in a British accent, which means I'm very tired, or y'all in a Southern American accent, which means you all. By practicing with a variety of sources, you gradually learn to understand English no matter the accent. At this level, listening is not just about hearing words, it's about grasping meaning instantly. You need to pick up on slang, idioms, and informal phrases without pausing. You also need to understand the context and emotions behind the words. For example, in a conversation, someone might say, "It's a piece of cake," to mean that something is very easy. Without knowing idioms, you might take it literally and get confused. But by understanding common expressions and cultural context, you can follow along smoothly. Practicing this takes time and attention. Try listening actively to real-world English. Focus on informal conversations. Watch movies, listen to podcasts, or follow social media content in English. Notice how native speakers speak casually, use idioms, and adjust their tone. The more you do this, the easier it becomes to recognize slang, understand different accents, and follow fast-paced conversations. At B2, your goal is to listen, understand, and respond naturally, just like a native speaker. You should be comfortable with slang, idioms, regional expressions, and accents. The key is consistent practice, exposure to different types of English, and paying attention to context and culture. With regular practice, you'll find that English becomes easier to understand, more natural to speak, and much more enjoyable to use in real-life situations. At the B2 level, it's very important to be able to understand different English accents. English is spoken in many countries, and even within the same country, people speak differently. For example, the way people talk in London can be very different from the way people talk in New York City. You might notice differences in pronunciation, rhythm, and even vocabulary. At B2 level, you should be able to follow these variations and understand the meaning without getting confused. Different regions also have different tones and speeds of speech. In New York, people often speak quickly, while in California, the pace can be more relaxed. In the UK, accents change depending on the region. Someone from Manchester will sound different from someone in London or Edinburgh. Learning to understand these accents can be difficult at first, but the more you listen to various English-speaking regions, the easier it becomes to understand English no matter the accent. At this level, listening is not just about hearing words, it's about grasping meaning instantly. You need to pick up on slang, idioms, and informal phrases without pausing. You also need to understand the context and emotions behind the words. For example, in a conversation, you might say, "I'm contemplating whether I should take the job offer in London or stay here." A B1 level speaker might simply say, "I'm thinking about the job offer." Using the more precise word makes your English sound more sophisticated and professional. Advanced vocabulary also includes formal and informal words, technical terms, and specialized jargon. For instance, a scientist might use specific technical terms, while a casual conversation with friends may include slang or informal expressions. At B2 level, you should be able to switch between these different types of vocabulary depending on the situation. This flexibility is what sets advanced speakers apart from intermediate learners. Grammar at this stage becomes more nuanced and detailed. You need to understand how to use complex sentence structures, conditional sentences, passive voice, and other advanced grammar forms naturally. For example, instead of saying, "I will think about it," a B2 level speaker might say, "I will have to contemplate the consequences before making a decision." This demonstrates a deeper understanding of meaning, tone, and context. The combination of understanding regional accents, advanced vocabulary, idioms, and complex grammar is what makes B2 level listening and speaking truly advanced. By regularly practicing with real-world English sources, such as interviews, TV shows, podcasts, and YouTube videos, you can improve your ability to understand different accents, pick up advanced words naturally, and apply them correctly in conversation. In short, reaching B2 level is not just about knowing English, it's about using it fluently, naturally, and accurately in any situation, no matter the accent, context, or complexity of the conversation. This is the stage where your English becomes truly native-like. At the B2 level, one important skill is using advanced vocabulary effectively. For example, instead of saying think about, you could say contemplate to sound more thoughtful and precise. Similarly, instead of saying very good, you could use words like exceptional or outstanding to make your English richer. However, it's important not to overuse advanced words. If you try to use a difficult word in every sentence, it can make your speech sound unnatural or forced. The key is balance. Use simple words when they are clear and bring in advanced vocabulary when you want to add precision or sophistication. This way, your language will be varied and natural. Another key feature of B2 level English is the ability to use complex sentence structures. Beginners often speak in very simple sentences like, I don't like the movie. At B2 level, you can express the same idea in a more detailed and nuanced way, such as, despite the overwhelmingly positive reviews, I found the movie to be surprisingly underwhelming. In this sentence, several complex ideas are combined, using words like despite and subordinating clauses. Complex and compound sentences allow you to share multiple ideas in one sentence and express yourself with more depth and clarity. Using these structures helps your English sound more advanced and natural. Let's look at another example to break down a complex sentence. Not only did she arrive late, but she also forgot to bring the documents we needed for the meeting. Here's what's happening in this sentence. Not only, but also is a correlative conjunction that connects two contrasting ideas. Did she arrive late uses inversion for emphasis, which makes the sentence sound more formal and complex. She forgot to bring the documents adds another layer of detail. By using sentences like this, you can express multiple ideas in a single sentence, making your English more fluid, clear, and sophisticated. This is exactly the kind of language B2 speakers are expected to use. To practice, start with simple sentences and try to expand them using advanced vocabulary and complex structures. For example, take a simple sentence like, I was tired and I went to bed early. You could expand it to, after a long and exhausting day, I was completely drained, so I decided to go to bed early to recharge for the next day. Notice how adding details, using precise vocabulary, and connecting ideas with conjunctions makes the sentence more engaging and natural. At C2 level, mastering complex sentences is not just about grammar, it's about thinking in English and expressing multiple ideas smoothly. The more you practice, the easier it becomes to use these structures in both writing and speaking. With time, your sentences will flow naturally, your vocabulary will be richer, and your English will sound much more like that of a native speaker. At the B2 level, one important skill is taking simple sentences and making them more complex and detailed. For example, a simple sentence might be, I didn't enjoy the meeting. To make this sentence more advanced, you can add a subordinate clause or conjunction and include extra detail. For example, although the meeting was well organized, I found it to be rather unengaging and ultimately a waste of time. In this advanced version, the word although introduces a contrast, and extra details like well organized and ultimately a waste of time make the sentence richer. This is how B2 level English speakers express their thoughts with clarity, sophistication, and nuance. The goal is to combine ideas into a single sentence rather than using many short sentences. This makes your English sound more natural and fluent. However, when using advanced grammar and vocabulary, it's important to avoid common mistakes that many learners make. The first mistake is overcomplicating sentences. Sometimes learners try too hard to sound advanced and create sentences that are very long or confusing. If a sentence is too complicated, it can be hard to follow and may sound unnatural. The key is to keep complex sentences clear and smooth, so your listener or reader can easily understand your point. The second mistake is incorrect word choice. Advanced vocabulary is powerful, but you need to make sure the word fits the context. For example, you might want to say, I was quite surprised. If you replace it with flabbergasted, it may sound too strong or informal for a professional conversation. Always ask yourself, does this word match the situation and tone? Choosing words carefully is an essential part of sounding natural at B2 level. The third common mistake is misusing phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs like pick up, look after, or give up are very common in everyday English. Advanced learners sometimes forget them because they focus on formal or academic vocabulary.
But phrasal verbs are an important part of real-life communication. Using them correctly makes your English sound natural and fluent, especially in informal conversations. To practice, start by finding simple sentences and thinking of more advanced alternatives. For example, the sentence, "The movie was good," can be improved by using a more sophisticated word. Instead of good, you could say impressive, remarkable, or exceptional. You can also expand the sentence. The movie was exceptionally well made, with a compelling story and outstanding performances. This version uses advanced vocabulary and gives more detail, showing a higher level of fluency. Another way to practice is to listen to native speakers and notice how they structure their sentences. Pay attention to when they use subordinate clauses, correlative conjunctions like not only but also, and transitions like although or however. Try to use these structures in your own writing and speaking. Over time, you'll become more comfortable expressing complex ideas naturally. Finally, remember that B2 level English is about balance. Use advanced words and grammar where appropriate, but also keep sentences clear and natural. Combine complex structures with common phrases, idioms, and phrasal verbs. This combination is what makes your English sound like a native speaker, polished, fluent, and flexible enough to handle any conversation or situation. At the B2 level, one of the biggest challenges is understanding native speakers in real life. By now, you don't just need to understand textbook English, you need to understand how English is spoken naturally in fast, informal conversations full of contractions, slang, and colloquial phrases. At this stage, you should be able to follow different types of conversations, from chatting casually with friends to attending lectures or even participating in business meetings. But there's a challenge. Native speakers often talk quickly. They don't always pronounce every word clearly, and they often blend words together. For example, instead of saying, "I'm going to," you might hear, "I'm gonna." These small changes can make speech harder to understand if you're not used to them. One of the main difficulties is speech speed. In casual conversations, people speak fast, drop syllables, or use informal contractions. This can make it difficult to catch every word. So, how do you improve? The key is to listen to real-world English as much as possible. Watch movies, listen to podcasts, follow interviews, or watch YouTube videos where people speak naturally. These sources show you how English is really spoken, not just how it looks in textbooks. Start by listening multiple times. The first time, you may understand only half of what is said. The second time, you'll catch more. After several repetitions, your brain will begin to process fast speech more easily, and you'll understand more details each time. The most important tip is don't worry if you don't understand everything at first. Focus on the main idea. As you continue listening, your brain will gradually pick up smaller details, like expressions, slang, and tone. Tone and intonation are another important part of understanding native speakers. Tone is how someone says something, and intonation is the rise and fall of their voice. These elements convey emotion, intention, and meaning.
For example, the sentence, "I can't believe you did that," can have different meanings depending on how it's said. Said with a flat tone, it might sound neutral. Said angrily, it could express shock or frustration. Said happily, it could express excitement or amazement. By paying attention to tone and intonation, you can understand not just the words, but the feelings behind them. Another tip is to focus on patterns. Native speakers often use common phrases, idioms, or fillers like you know, like, or actually. These may seem meaningless at first, but they help you follow the flow of conversation. The more you listen, the more familiar you become with these patterns, making it easier to anticipate what speakers will say next. At B2 level, understanding native speakers is about more than just hearing words. It's about understanding meaning, catching nuances, and following fast, natural speech. Listening regularly to movies, podcasts, interviews, and real conversations helps train your brain to process speech naturally. Over time, your listening will improve, and you'll start understanding native speakers easily, even when they speak quickly or use informal expressions. By practicing this way, you'll also improve your own speaking skills because you begin to imitate the natural rhythm, tone, and flow of English. You'll sound more fluent, confident, and comfortable in any conversation. At the B2 level, understanding tone and context is just as important as understanding the words themselves. Tone shows the emotion and intention behind what someone says. For example, the sentence, "I can't believe you did that," can mean very different things depending on tone. Said with a neutral or flat tone, it might show mild surprise. Said angrily, it shows frustration. Said happily, it could express excitement or amazement. Tone is especially important when people use sarcasm or irony. For instance, if someone says, "Yeah, sure, I'll totally help you with that," the tone tells you if they're being sincere or sarcastic. Without paying attention to tone, you might misinterpret the meaning entirely. Here's a simple practice for tone recognition. Imagine a sentence that's really great, said in 3 different ways. Excited tone sounds positive, like the person is genuinely happy. Flat tone could indicate indifference or lack of enthusiasm. Sarcastic tone used when someone is frustrated or disappointed but says the opposite. Practicing this way helps you read between the lines and understand unspoken meanings in conversations, which is a key skill at B2 level. Another crucial skill is understanding context. Words alone don't always make sense, but their meaning becomes clear in a situation. For example, the phrase, "I can't even," might confuse you at first, but in context, when someone is shocked, overwhelmed, or frustrated, it means something like, "I can't handle this," or "I'm speechless." A pro tip is to try guessing the meaning of unfamiliar words from context. Don't worry if you don't understand every single word. Focus on the overall idea or message. With regular practice, your brain will start automatically understand the meaning of words in context, making real-life conversations much easier. One of the most effective ways to improve listening at C2 level is mimicking native speakers.
This means not just repeating words, but also copying intonation, rhythm, and speed. When you mimic, your brain starts to process English the way native speakers do. You'll learn the natural flow of sentences, common reductions, contractions, and how emphasis changes meaning. For example, a native speaker might say, "I'm gonna go now quickly," almost blending the words together. If you try mimicking that rhythm, it becomes easier to understand when you hear it naturally.
Start by listening to short phrases or sentences and repeat them exactly as you hear them. Focus on how the words rise and fall, where the speaker pauses, and which words are stressed. Gradually move to longer sentences and conversations. Over time, this practice will improve both your listening and speaking skills, making your English sound more natural and fluent. Remember, at B2 level, listening is not just about hearing words, it's about understanding tone, emotion, intention, slang, idioms, and context. By paying attention to these details and practicing regularly, you'll be able to follow fast, informal, and nuanced conversations with ease. You'll also be able to respond naturally using the same rhythm, expressions, and style as native speakers. At the C2 level, one of the best ways to improve your English is mimicking native speakers. This doesn't mean copying every single word exactly. Instead, it's about paying attention to how they speak, how they pronounce words, where they pause, how quickly they speak, intonation, how their voice rises and falls, emphasis, which words they stress to express meaning or emotion. By copying these patterns, you can make your own speech sound more natural and fluent, and your listening comprehension will improve at the same time. Here's a simple exercise. Listen to the sentence, "I can't believe how quickly time flies when we're having fun." When you repeat it, focus on the rhythm and intonation. Put emphasis on quickly to show surprise. Use a slightly rising tone on time flies to express excitement. Drop the G in having because in natural speech, native speakers often say havin' fun. Repeat the sentence several times until it starts to feel comfortable. By practicing like this, you start to internalize the natural flow of English, which helps both listening and speaking skills. Now, try a longer exercise. Pick a short video or audio clip of a native English speaker. This could be a TED Talk, YouTube video, podcast, or even a short conversation. Choose a segment about 30 seconds long and mimic the speaker as closely as possible. Focus on pronunciation, how they pronounce vowels and consonants, rhythm, where they pause and how quickly they speak, intonation, how their voice rises and falls, emphasis, which words they stress to express meaning or emotion. After listening, repeat the segment out loud, imitating all these elements. Play it multiple times and repeat it until it feels natural. Doing this regularly helps your brain recognize patterns in native speech, making it easier to understand fast or informal conversations. Over time, this will also make your own speaking more fluent and natural. At C2 level, listening is not just passive, it's about actively engaging with what you hear. You need to analyze and deconstruct complex information, noticing how ideas are connected and how meaning is expressed. This means paying attention to complex vocabulary and expressions, idioms and phrasal verbs used in everyday speech, tone and emotion to understand hidden meaning or sarcasm, context to interpret unfamiliar words or phrases. One advanced strategy is to listen in layers. First, focus on the main idea of a conversation. Don't worry about catching every single word. Then, listen again for details like tone, emphasis, or idiomatic phrases. Finally, pay attention to cultural references or subtle humor that native speakers use. By layering your listening in this way, your comprehension will become more precise and nuanced. Another strategy is to predict what comes next in a conversation. Native speakers often follow patterns in how they speak. By anticipating words or phrases, you train your brain to process speech faster, even if some words are unfamiliar. This skill is especially useful when listening to This is what sets B2 level listeners apart. The ability to follow, process, and respond to advanced natural English with confidence and ease. When you start listening to English at the B2 level, the first step is thinking about the context. Ask yourself, who is speaking? What is the topic? What do I already know about this subject? By preparing your mind like this, you can predict what might be said and get ready to understand the message more easily. This pre-listening step is very important because it helps your brain focus on key ideas rather than trying to understand every single word. The second step is active listening. Active listening is different from just hearing the words. You need to engage with what you hear. While listening, ask yourself questions. What is the speaker's main point? Why are they saying this? How does this connect to what I already know? By thinking this way, you not only understand better, but you also remember more of what you hear. Active listening helps you catch the underlying meaning, not just the surface words. Third, use technology to help you. There are many tools for improving listening. Podcasts, audiobooks, and YouTube videos are excellent. You can also slow down or loop parts of the audio to focus on difficult sections. Subtitles can be useful too, especially at the start to connect the spoken words with a written form. Over time, as your listening improves, you can gradually rely less on subtitles and more on your ears. Fourth, try shadowing, an advanced technique where you repeat what the speaker says in real time. Shadowing helps both your listening and speaking skills at once. Pay attention to tone, rhythm, pronunciation, and pauses. For example, if a speaker says, "I can't believe how fast time flies," notice which words are stressed and how the sentence rises and falls. Repeat it immediately, copying these patterns. This trains your brain to process spoken English faster and makes your own speech more natural. A good practice activity is listening to a short TED Talk or academic lecture. As you listen, take notes on the main points and key ideas. Don't try to write down every word. Focus on understanding the big picture first. Afterward, summarize the talk in a few sentences. This exercise helps you break down complex information and improves your memory of what you hear. Once you've summarized the main points, you can go back and check details you missed. Remember, the goal at the B2 level is not perfection. You won't understand every word, and that's okay. What matters most is grasping the overall meaning, following the flow of ideas, and noticing patterns in speech. Over time, these habits will make understanding fast, informal, and complex English much easier. By combining these strategies, pre-listening preparation, active listening, using technology, shadowing, and summarizing, you develop a deeper understanding of English. You start thinking in English, recognizing tone and intonation, and processing complex ideas like a native speaker. This approach builds confidence and helps you handle real-world listening situations, from fast conversations with friends to professional lectures and debates. Practice regularly, and you'll notice that even the most difficult audio becomes more understandable. Your vocabulary grows naturally, and your ability to communicate fluently and naturally improves every day. These techniques make listening at the B2 level not just possible, but enjoyable and rewarding. At the B2 level, the goal of listening is not just hearing words, but understanding the most important information and the core message of the speaker. To do this, you need to practice regularly and be strategic about how you improve your listening skills. Improving listening takes time. You won't become perfect overnight, but with consistent practice, it becomes easier and more natural. Here are some tips to help you improve over time. 1. Set realistic goals. Start with small, achievable targets for your listening practice. For example, try listening to English for 15 minutes every day. Choose something simple at first, like a short podcast, a video, or a conversation. Over time, gradually increase both the length and the difficulty of the content you listen to. This step-by-step approach makes improvement manageable and keeps you motivated. 2. Track your progress. Pay attention to how much better you're getting. Are you able to follow fast conversations more easily? Are you catching more details in lectures or podcasts than before? Reflecting on your progress helps you understand what's working and what you need to adjust. You can keep a notebook or digital journal to note your improvements, which is encouraging and helps you plan your next practice steps. 3. Be consistent. Consistency is one of the most important factors in improving your listening. Even if you only have 5 to 10 minutes each day, make that time count. Listen actively to English, whether it's a short podcast, an audiobook, or a brief conversation. Regular exposure to English, even in small doses, helps your brain get used to the natural rhythm, intonation, and speed of native speech. Over time, this makes complex English much easier to understand. 4. Challenge yourself as your skills grow. Don't stay in your comfort zone. Try listening to more difficult material. Watch movies or shows without subtitles. Listen to podcasts with different accents like British, American, Australian, or even regional variations. Try live news broadcasts where speakers talk fast and use complex vocabulary. Challenging yourself like this strengthens your ability to understand real-world English in a variety of situations. Now, let's talk about applying advanced listening skills in real life. At the B2 level, English is no longer just for exams or textbooks. You're learning to use English in real-world situations, such as work, school, or social interactions. You should be able to understand and participate in professional, academic, and social conversations. For example, in a work setting, you might need to follow a fast-paced meeting or understand detailed instructions from a manager. In an academic context, you might need to listen to a lecture, take notes, and summarize the main points accurately. In social situations, you should be able to understand informal speech, idioms, and jokes.
The key is combining all the skills you've practiced. Active listening, recognizing tone and intonation, shadowing, breaking down complex information, and summarizing key points. By following these steps, setting goals, tracking progress, practicing consistently, and challenging yourself, you'll gradually develop the ability to understand English naturally and confidently. You'll be able to follow fast conversations, recognize subtle meanings, and participate fully in real-world situations. B2 level listening isn't just about words. It's about understanding meaning, context, and the rhythm of English. With patience and regular practice, your listening comprehension will improve dramatically, making you feel more confident in every situation. Whether it's casual conversations with friends, professional meetings, academic lectures, or even watching English media. Remember, real-world English is complex and fast, but with these strategies, you'll be ready to understand and engage like a native speaker. At the B2 level, using English in real-world situations is an essential skill. This means you should be able to understand English in all kinds of settings, from formal boardroom meetings and academic discussions to casual chats with friends or native speakers from different cultures. Let's look at how real-world English works in different contexts and how you can improve your listening to become more fluent. Using English in professional settings. If you plan to use English at work, whether for job interviews, meetings, or daily communication, advanced listening is very important. At B2 level, you should be able to understand technical vocabulary, formal presentations, and industry-specific jargon. For instance, in a business meeting, people might use words related to finance, marketing, or management. You might not understand every technical term immediately, but by focusing on the context, you can still follow the conversation and participate confidently. For example, imagine you're in a job interview for a sales manager position. The interviewer might ask, "How do you handle tight deadlines?" They're not just asking this question literally, they're looking for information about your time management skills and ability to work under pressure. By listening carefully to both the words and the meaning behind them, you can respond appropriately and show that you understand the expectations. Adapting to different accents. Another challenge at B2 level is understanding different English accents. English is a global language, and native speakers come from many countries, each with unique pronunciation, intonation, and cultural influences. Examples include British, American, Australian, or even Indian English. Each accent can change how words sound, how sentences flow, and even how certain phrases are used. The key to mastering accents is exposure. The more you listen to speakers from different regions, the easier it becomes to recognize patterns and understand them naturally. Start with videos, podcasts, or interviews that feature speakers from various places. You could watch a British TV series, listen to an American podcast, or follow an Australian YouTube channel. Over time, your ear will become trained to pick up the nuances of each accent, and you will find it much easier to follow conversations without confusion. Applying advanced listening in real life. At B2 level, your goal is to use all the listening strategies you've learned in real-world situations. In professional environments, this means understanding complex discussions, picking up on subtle hints in conversation, and following presentations with advanced vocabulary. Wow, there was a lot of useful English today. I hope you found these phrases helpful and that you're excited to start using them in your daily conversations. Remember, the key to speaking English confidently is practice, practice, and more practice. If you enjoyed today's lesson, make sure to like this video and share it with your friends who are learning English too. And don't forget to subscribe to JBC English Learning Academy and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new video that helps you speak naturally and confidently. I'd love to hear from you. Comment below and tell me which phrase you liked the most today, or share a sentence using one of the phrases we learned. I read all your comments and I'm excited to see your progress. Thank you so much for learning with me today. Keep practicing, stay confident, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.